Hello and welcome to From the Editor, a weekly conversation about the cover stories that appear in the Columbus Dispatch. I'm Mike Shearer, Executive Editor of the Dispatch and Dispatch.com, and I'm here today with a special guest, Columbus City Council President Shannon Hardin, to discuss the 5th anniversary of the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis and the resulting nationwide protests and all that came after those events, and conversation about national conversation about policing and racial injustice. So, Council President, thanks for sitting down today.
Mike, thank you for having me. Thank you for really honoring what this 5-year anniversary is, what it has meant for our community, and hopefully where we go from here.
Well, thank you. We have a series of stories that will start on Sunday, June 1st, and run for a few days after that. So, first, I kind of wanted to ask you, think back 5 years when you first heard about this man in Minneapolis, a police officer put his knee on his throat for 9+ minutes. What was your initial reaction to that news?
Sure. I think that, I think that being an elected official in 2020, I'd been on council at that time for 6 years or so. You've heard of police encounters with Black folks. And so you hear about it, but you think, this is really unfortunate. But then there was something very different about this time. Mm-hmm. Then later that day, you see the video.
Yeah.
And then you say, oh, shoot, this is something. And you think of it as, I don't know if I think first as a Black person, a Black man, or an elected official. As a Black person, you think, oh, this is something that they caught on camera, what so many folks in our community have talked about for so many years, not feeling like there was real accountability when it came to policing. Then, as an elected official, I'm thinking, gee, this is going to be bad.
Yeah,
this is going to be bad when people will have a reaction, and the reality of it is, what George Floyd was a breaking point for our country, for our community, where folks rightfully felt that this was the time to say enough is enough and to demand reform. And it was a hell of a thing to be a part of. It was a hell of a thing to live through, but it was an even more a harrowing thing to lead through.
Great point. And part of your leadership that week was that you were on that, I think Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, it was you and Congressman Beatty and County Commissioner Kevin Boyce are on the sidewalk on Capitol Square there. And there's photos of you in that encounter that our photo editor Kyle Robertson captured that day. What happened that day, and how did that further fuel what's happened since? Sure.
So the protest started earlier that week, and that started happening even in Columbus earlier that week. And folks were saying they were out of hand. I was hearing things from community members. I remember on Thursday, someone saying, you really got to go down there and see what's happening. And,
you mean the police were out of hand or the protests were out of hand?
Kind of both.
Okay.
But downtown doesn't seem like itself. That's what I kept on hearing. Okay. You would never imagine what is happening down there. And you get briefings in the day from folks, and they say, well, we have it under control. There's some... But I remember getting a call on Friday night from Congresswoman Beatty, and she said, we should go out there. And I was like, I don't know. She said, well, if you're not going to go out there, why don't we just go out in the morning and just, show that people are being calm, encourage people to stay calm. And so we went out in the morning because we thought it got crazy at night, not in the morning. And what I saw was I can never unsee. It really was a city that was in turmoil. Folks were hurt. People were angry, but they were also peaceful. They were yelling, but they were on the sidewalks. Mm-hmm. And I saw a police department that obviously did not know how to engage with peaceful protest. And I remember obviously getting pepper sprayed, and that was something. And I knew it was something at the moment, but it really didn't hit me what had happened until later that afternoon. That happened at maybe 10:30, 11 a.m. Mm-hmm. I had at 4 p.m. my nephew Christian's kindergarten or first grade graduation at his school. And But at that time, video had gotten out of me being pepper sprayed, and a lady walked up to me, a black lady, and I'll never forget. She said, "I'm terrified now, because if that can happen to you, just think what they will do to me and my children." And my heart sank. And I realized that now this personal fear, this personal even anger, frustration, that I had to take this pain and turn it into policy. And that's when we got to work.
So let's fast forward 5 years forward now. What do you think has happened in the last 5 years here in Columbus that has had the greatest impact to help address the residents' concerns about policing? And I mean, it's more than policing, of course. It's really about racial injustice in its totality. Sure. So tell me about what's happened in Columbus since then that gives you hope, and we'll talk in a minute about what your concerns are going forward.
Sure. I think that what folks I think wanted at that time and still want is not less policing or division, but they just want better and fair and accountability. And so, that evening of that protest, we called for civilian review board and inspector general. We got that passed later in November with the voters. So 5 years forward, we have a operating office of inspector general. We have a seated civilian review board that has reviewed thousands and thousands of police cases. I just think that specifically, one of the things I'm most proud of the police department in particular is the dialogue team. There are protests happening. Last year, we went through 6 months of protests at city council. And how the dialogue team that has been created post George Floyd is just absolutely amazing in terms of protecting people's rights for free speech. And then, what I really leaned into was that everybody deserves safety, but they also deserve the right type of safety. So leaning into the alternative crisis response and growing that from a small pilot in 2018, 2019, 2020 to now a large part of how we see public safety, saying that everybody deserves the right response to the crises that they're going through. And so I think that those are some very specific things that have happened in the last 5 years that have made our city safer and better and more just. I think that obviously there were a lot of conversations that happened post George Floyd where we looked at ourselves as a country around diversity, equity, inclusion, around how do we make sure that everybody feels a part of this thing called America and right here in Columbus. And I think there were a lot of things that were said, a lot of things that it was easy to lean into, being pro diversity and pro equity and inclusion, that I think that a lot of folks feel challenged by now and seeing some of that being rolled back, or conversations around your ability to even say those words, diversity, equity, inclusion. I think that is creating probably new wounds that our country will have to deal with going forward. I think that maybe these conversations about who we are and who we want to be are cyclical, but this new moment we are in, where it is, as a threat to funding, as a threat to your ability to operate your business or your law firm or the press, leaning into things like diversity and equity inclusion, or your college. I think that there will be another equal and opposite reaction to this that, unfortunately, I think it will take us back to some really deep and hurtful concerns and conversations as a country.
Okay. Once again, I'm Mike Shearer, editor of the Dispatch, here with Columbus City Council President Shannon Hardin, talking about the 5th anniversary of the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis and the reactions to that. Let's go back to the dialogue team for a minute. These are the blue vested officers who have been trained, and maybe talk about that a little bit about what's involved in that and how do they go about their work.
Yeah, so we've had de-escalation folks trained in the Division of Police for a while, but what we saw after 2020 was that we needed to really make this a focus and put real resources into training the division to how to deal with protests. What we were doing, obviously, pre-2020 was not right and did not work. And so we brought in experts from around the country, or not the country, around the world. Yeah. We sent folks to Europe to learn around de-escalation and crowd control. And it really is about engaging, creating a point of contact, a person of contact within police, identifying that I am here not in a affirmative policing role, but as a buffer to make sure that everyone is safe. Mm-hmm. Creating that literal dialogue that let's keep the conversation going. If we talk before, during, and as an event is going on, that it will be safer for everybody. And we have seen it work time and time again, even with folks that you desperately disagree with. Mm-hmm. I remember last year, the year before last, neo-Nazis came to Pride events, pre-Pride events. And it was the dialogue team that created that buffer between some of the Pride events and those neo-Nazis that could have turned something really nasty and scary into something dangerous. And it didn't happen. All of last year when we were having deep and serious conversations around Israel and Gaza, mm-hmm. and city council and council chamber was taken over, that dialogue team kept it so that everyone was safe and no one got arrested. It's a huge deal. And I think that as we go through these periods, even in the last few weeks where there have been protests against the Trump administration, that dialogue team has been out there keeping everyone safe.
So what you're saying, what I'm hearing is that the city of Columbus is far better prepared to handle these situations today than we were 5 years ago.
100%. 100% in terms of how we engage with the public, how we talk, how we make sure that folks' right to free speech is protected. And that we do that in a safe way, 100%. That dialogue team is something that I'm very proud of, and very grateful in our police chief, Elaine Bryant, for leaning into.
Okay. You mentioned the Civilian Police Review Board. In our article that's running with this podcast, we quote folks who think it's worked well, and we also quote Brian Steele, who says that it largely, the FOP president, mm-hmm. who largely says it has mirrored what the police department is finding on complaints and not really been anything. They have for example, I guess he was saying is Civilian Review Board has not found misconduct that the police have not found themselves, and so on. So what is your kind of take on how this has worked so far, and is it worth the investment?
Sure, 100%. Policing is part of a social contract where folks have to, because what we learned in 2020, you don't have enough police to just stop a thing. So it has to be a belief that the thing itself is right, is just, is accountable. And so it never made sense, just because it didn't pass the sniff test, it didn't pass the accountability test, to have the entity itself investigating itself. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah. And so having that distance, that separation between an IG and the Civilian Review Board builds confidence back into our police department that we are who we say we are, and that we are holding ourselves accountable, that we did lean into reform, that we have learned lessons, that we are community oriented. So 100% yes, okay. It is worth it. And I think that it gives folks a place to go that is not directly the police, but also gives peace of mind that there is outside accountability. And it's not an indictment on the police. It's to support policing, to allow for folks to have full confidence that this thing is being done right.
An extra set of eyes, really.
Yes.
Okay. One of the big changes, too, was there were buyouts of the police department of senior leaders, and you have a new chief, as you mentioned. How would you describe the Columbus Police Department today versus 5 years ago?
I think that what our division has done is been introspective, learned, and improved. In the last 5 years, we have hired a new police chief. I think rank and file support her leadership. I know the community is very appreciative. She is a community first police chief, where she is out at as many community events as I am. Folks know her. And she's been visible, and I think that helps with policing and building that trust and connection between community. I think that some of the things like the buyout, the intent of that is to bring new energy into the police department with younger folks who came into policing as a choice after 2020 and wanting to be a part of positive change. I think that there has been improvements at the training academy that have made us better. I think that I think as a community and as a safety and a community, we have come together in real ways. And even the relationship with the FOP, one where you really couldn't be seen with FOP back in the day. I think that especially in 2020, there was all these fights. Yeah. The relationship between Brian Steele and FOP and is respectful, where we talk and we talk about accountability. How do we support officers when they need to be supported, but also how do we hold officers accountable when they do? Also, that we can protect the trust and faith that our residents have in our ability to police them and police them in the right way.
All right. So what do you see today? I mean, obviously, we talked a little bit about the political environment already, but what do you see as the pressing priorities here in terms of continuing this journey to improve policing in Columbus and to address the lessons of 2020?
Well, I'm not sure when this will air, but yesterday, so May 21st, there was a hate crime in Washington, D.C., where two Israeli embassy workers were murdered in the name of hate. And so one of the things that scares me is that hate is still alive and well in this country and in this community. And there has to be a space where truth is still truth, where we can call out things that are just demonstrably wrong, where we can also acknowledge things that are demonstrably good, like diversity, equity, and inclusion. The fact that those things are under attack, truth, is terrifying for me as a leader in our community. How do we continue to be the safe haven where folks of all communities feel welcomed and protected? And not just protected, celebrated. We're about to have, in the next 3 weeks, the largest Pride event in the Midwest, where 700,000 people will come out and walk in the streets of a state that says that many of them shouldn't even be allowed to be here. That juxtaposition, that tension is real. And I'm a firm believer that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So where does it say what comes next? It definitely implies that something comes next. And how is that, whatever that is, thoughtful? How do we ensure that whatever comes next actually moves us forward, has sticking and staying power? I don't want another movement that is flashy or on bumper stickers, but that fades away in a year or two. We have to, I think, because people's lives are literally depending on it, find ways to bring people together and see how, at least in this city, we can build something that literally all feel a part of.
So you're saying you're curious about what the next social movement,
for sure,
protest, whatever you want to call it, movement is coming, what it looks like and how it turns out and what happens.
And what are the outcomes of it?
Yeah.
One, going through it will not be fun. I've learned that over the last couple of years, that not going through social movements that challenge us are not fun. But you have to go through them. So put that aside. My concern after that is, let's not make it be for naught. Yeah. Let's make the painful conversations worth it. Let's think about all these ups and downs, the back and forth that we've had as a community, as a culture, and as people, and say, for once, we actually want to take a step forward and protect and lift up and celebrate. What would that look like? And really have everybody participate in an honest way, from private sector to government to nonprofits to all these institutions. I think that is what I think about a lot. How does the next social movement actually advance our community, our ability to be a multi-ethnic, religious faith community, one that celebrates many different identities? How do we do that in a way that actually moves the ball forward and stays?
Because there's a lot of thought the ball was going to move forward 5 years ago, and it hasn't. We've talked about it already, but it hasn't moved where you want it to be, obviously.
And kind of flew back.
Flew back, yes.
Yeah, we moved. We took a step forward and we took a step back.
Yeah.
And so I think that probably are the vicissitudes of life, of a culture. But at some point we got to say enough is enough. We got to be able to call truth and call hate. And say that we are going to do our part to move us forward. And I believe that will be the challenge for the next one. And I think that we will be more open or cognizant of the staying power of those conversations because of what we've seen in the last 2 years. That it can go backwards.
Well, I mean, it's natural to have progress and step back, but this has been more than that.
It's been drastic.
Yeah.
It's been pretty in our face.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Council President Hardin, for being here today, and thanks to our viewers out there. You can watch the Dispatch and Dispatch.com beginning Sunday, June 1 for several days of stories on the 5th anniversary of George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis. And until next time, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Council President Hardin.
Thank you, sir.